Hello and welcome to Food Composition Explained. My name is Fernanda Grande, and in this video I will show you how to make recipe calculation using Excel. So this is our second video about recipe calculations, and in the first one I have presented the basic concepts and all the steps that we need to follow before making the calculations. So if you didn't see this video yet, I suggest that you go there and watch that video first, and then you come back and see how we can use Excel to make the calculations. So in this video, I will present the recipe calculation template that I have developed using Excel, and it will give you some ideas to create your own template, or you will be able to download this template that I have created using Excel. And at the end of this video, I will show you how you can download this template. So let's start. So this is the template that I have created to calculate mixed dishes using Excel. As you can see here, we have 6 different spreadsheets, and I will explain each of these for you, but as you can see since the beginning, many of them they are protected, either because you won't need to make any changes in the spreadsheets, or because the spreadsheets are linked using a lot of formulas, and if you change, you will lose the functions that we have here. So this is why they are protected, but as you can see here, the spreadsheet for recipe calculation is not protected, so you will be able to change some formulas, and I will explain you how to use all the features that we have here. So let's start with this first spreadsheet called Introductions. So here you will see a summary of all the spreadsheets and what you will find in each of them. So let's start looking at the spreadsheet where we have all the components. So here you will see all the components that are included in the recipe calculation spreadsheet, together with the recommended units, denominators, maximum decimal places, and the in-foods tag name. So if you want to use this template, you should match the definitions in the food composition table that you are using with the given tag names in this spreadsheet. And this is the number of maximum decimal places that I have included in our formulas in the recipe calculation spreadsheet, but if you prefer, you can also change and choose the maximum of decimal places as you prefer. And here we also have the formulas that are used in the calculation template. So the components that are calculated there are the sum of approximates, the energy in both kilojoules and kilocalories, and also the niacin equivalents, as you can see here. So you will find all the formulas used to the calculated components in the recipe calculation file. In the next spreadsheet, you will find a summary of all the steps that you need to follow to make the recipe calculations. That's what I'm going to present in this video also. So if during the calculation process you have doubts, you can come back to these instructions and check the steps. And here we have the 2 spreadsheets. That's where we will insert our data for the calculations itself, and I will come back to explain them in a few seconds. And the last spreadsheet is the set of nutrient retention factors that we are going to use in our calculations. And as I mentioned in the first video, I use the retention factors published by Eurofood, that are a collection of several different published nutrient retention factors. So if you have doubts during the selection of the nutrient retention factors in the recipe calculation spreadsheet, you can come here and check the options that we have. So here you will find the complete list for all published nutrient retention factors by Eurofood. And here you will find the complete reference, and if you want to download the original document, you can make it with the link that I left here. So let's go back to the two spreadsheets where we are going to insert the information that we need to make the recipe calculations. So the first one is this spreadsheet number 4, namely nutrient profile. So here is where we are going to insert the information from our food composition table for regarding the nutrient profile of each ingredient. So once we have selected the nutrient profile that we want to use for our ingredients and that we checked that the values are of good quality and that there are not that many missing values in our ingredients, we can paste the information here to use during our recipe calculations. So it's important that you use the template as presented here, so you need to match your components with the components that we have here following the in-foods tag names. And in this spreadsheet, it is important that you insert your data here in the lines. You should not change the order or the number of columns that we have here, because if you do it, we will lose the functions of the formulas that we have in the spreadsheet for the calculations. So it's important that you keep the format of this template. And finally, in the spreadsheet 5, we have the recipe calculation template itself, and this is where we are going to make the calculations for all the recipes that we want to calculate the final nutrient profile. So here we have the template, and to make it easier to understand, I will show you an example of how we can use this template. So let's start with the step number 1, inserting here the nutrient profile for the ingredients that I'm going to use in our example. So I will insert here just a few lines to show you how the spreadsheet works. So this data I took from the US food composition database, and it includes all the information that I need for the ingredients that I will use in the recipe in our example. And here I have already checked and put all the components in the correct column according to the tag names that I'm presenting here. And once we add all the ingredients here in this spreadsheet, this is all we need to do in this spreadsheet number 4. So let's go to the spreadsheet 5 where we have the actual recipe calculation. So how should we use it? So here in these lines is where we have all the formulas to make our calculations. So I recommend that you never use this first part of the template. You should always copy this first part and paste below. So in this way you will keep the first one clean, so you can always copy and paste to calculate the different recipes that you need. So here is where we are going to add all the details that we need for our recipe calculation. So our calculation here is divided in 3 different parts. So here we will need to insert all the ingredients and the nutrient profile for each ingredient. In part 2, we will select the nutrient retention factors for each ingredient. And in part 3, we need to insert all the details regarding the recipe itself. So it means that we need all the ingredients and the amount used for each ingredient. And here in this yellow part is where the calculation itself happens. So here we will need to insert the weight of the final recipe. So we need to know the final weight of the prepared dish, and all the other calculations will be automatic. And in this last line here is where you will see the final nutrient profile for the cooked recipe. So let's start inserting our information here. And here I want to call your attention that all the mandatory information that we need to insert in our spreadsheet is marked in red. So you will see here all the details that we need to insert for the formulas to work are marked in red. So let's start with the recipe name. And I will copy this information from my recipe data collection template. I will paste it here. So our example will follow what I have presented in our first video and will be orange cake homemade. So the next information that I will add here is the cooking method. In some cases, we need this information to select the appropriate nutrient retention factors. Now let's add the list of ingredients, and here I have two mandatory columns. I need to add the ingredient list and the ingredient state. And here it's important to note that the ingredient state refers to the weight of the ingredient as used in the recipe. This information will be very useful for us when we are matching our ingredient list with our food composition table. So now I have pasted here all the 6 ingredients that were used to make our orange cake. And the next step in our section 1 is to match all the ingredients with the food from our food composition table. And to make this matching, we will need to insert here the food code and the food description for each food. So I will show you. So I have already done this matching, because if not, we would have a very long video here. So I will just paste the matching of the ingredients here. In our ingredient list here, we have egg chicken whole, and in the food composition table, I did the correspondence with this food. So all foods combined with our ingredients, so if they are listed here, they should be in the spreadsheet number 4, and they are here with the same code and the same food description. And why this is important? Because our spreadsheet, our recipe calculation template, will copy all the nutrient values to the calculation template. So you will see that we have a formula here, and the formula uses exactly the code, the food code that we have combined with our ingredients to complete all the nutrients in the correct column. So it's important that after putting all the foods that we will combine with our ingredients here, we check if all the nutrient values were pasted correctly here in our spreadsheet. So after doing these 2 steps, so putting the ingredients and matching the food from our food composition table, we have the first part done. And now we can remove all the exceeding lines here in our template, because we are not going to use it. And you will see that when we start removing, the formulas stop working. We have problems in the formulas, but that's fine, because we are going to exclude in all the 3 steps here the exceeding lines, and it will be also easier to look at our recipe. So we have finished the first step in our recipe calculation, and we need to go to the second one. So now we need to select the nutrient retention factors for each ingredient in our recipe. So here we have the ingredients again, and they were pasted here automatically by the spreadsheet. So it's easier for us to make the correct selection of the nutrient retention factor. So the selection of the nutrient retention factor is done in 3 steps. So in the first one, we need to select the cooking type, and when we click here, we can see the options. So we have dry heat, moist heat, cooked with fat, retention factor not available. So you will see that for some ingredients we can't find any retention factor in the list of error field, so we will select this option. And we also have retention factor not required. We can use this one when we have some ingredients that are not cooked with the whole recipe. For example, if they are added at the end after the preparation, we can select that they are not necessary. So in these 2 options here, in these 2 last options, we are going to assume that all nutrient retention factors are equal to 1. So here for cake, we are going to select dry heat for all the ingredients. So for eggs, for orange, for sugar, for wheat flour, butter, and baking soda is one of the ingredients where we don't have a nutrient retention factor. So if you are not sure about the retention factors available and if we have one for a certain ingredient, you can just come here to this spreadsheet where we have all the nutrient retention factors listed and you can check. So here we can select retention factor not available. So now we can go to the next step and select the food group for each ingredient. So for eggs, we have a food group here. Orange, we will select fruits. Sugar in fact is one of the ingredients that we don't have a nutrient retention factor, but Eurofear recommends that we use the nutrient retention factors for fruit and fruit products. So let's select here again fruits. Wheat flour is in grains. So again, if you are not sure about the food group, you can check in this spreadsheet with all nutrient retention factors. And for butter, here we can select fat. And for baking soda, we don't need to select any other option because we already said that it's not available. So now we can go to the last step and select the food and the cooking method. So clicking here, we can see all the options that we have according to the food group that we have selected. For eggs, we have only two options, and in most of the cases, we will have a more generic cooking method like here, cooked by dry heat, and a more specific one. And we will always select the most specific one when it's available. So here we will select baked or roasted. For orange, we have three options, and let's select baked or roasted also. And we are going to do it for all the ingredients. For wheat flour, we have more options because we have more different types of foods. So we have here flour or starch. So let's select baked or roasted, butter, and that's it. Now we have filled all the nutrient retention factors. So you will see, and I always recommend that you check. When we go here to the minerals and vitamins, we will see that all the retention factors were filled here. Here for baking powder, as we selected that we don't need a retention factor, we should see here one for all the components. And now we have done the second part. So let's see what we have done so far. So here in this step number 1, we put the ingredients and we did the matching with our food composition table. In the second step, we selected the nutrient retention factor, and now it's only missing to add the data for the recipe itself. So here is where we need to insert all the amounts for each ingredient. And here I want to highlight that the only mandatory column is this one, where we should have the weight of all ingredients as used to prepare the recipe. But you can see here that I left more columns, more additional columns that you can use as a suggestion for your template. Of course, that you will need more than these columns in your template for recipe data collection, but this is already a suggestion, and I have here in my template all the information that I need, and I will copy and paste here. And let me just explain one thing here. So here is where I said that it's mandatory, and you will see that this column will replicate these values that I have inserted here. And how should we use it? In fact, the formulas will use these values to make these calculations. This is important in some cases where we have inedible parts in the ingredients that are used to prepare the final recipe. So, for example, in some cases where we have chicken and we have prepared the recipe using chicken with bones, at the end we will need to collect this information, the weight of the bones after cooking, and we will need to make the adjustments here. So this column should be used to make this type of adjustments. So if you insert the information like I did here in this column, so the weight of the ingredients including the inedible parts, and here the weight of the ingredients excluding all the inedible parts, you will have here the edible portion coefficient calculated for you. And now to finish the information that we need to add, we need to put here the weight of the final recipe. So the weight of the cake after baking, we need to insert here. So this spreadsheet also calculates the yield factor. But not only the yield factor, but now we should have all the calculated values of our recipe already here. So what is important to note? So here we will have the nutrient profile in the ingredients that we used, so in the amount of ingredient that we used in our recipe. And as you can see here, in some cases where I don't have, let's look to the whole recipe here. So here we have the nutrient profile that we inserted from our food composition table. So in my case, I'm not using this tag name for fat, I'm using only this one, but I left both, so you can use the one that is more appropriate according to your food composition table. So in this case, this is not, I'm not using, so I will just delete these values. And let's continue looking if we have any mistake here. So here we have some missing values. Here is the same situation as fat. We have two tag names for vitamin B6 and I'm using the other one, so this one I will delete. The same for folate, I'm not using folsum. And that's it. So let me just briefly explain what this spreadsheet is doing. So let's see here where we have the nutrient retention factors. So let's take here calcium as an example to understand what are the calculations here in this spreadsheet. So here in this green part, the formula is calculating how much of calcium I have based on the information from our food composition table, and it's also considering in this case the nutrient retention factor and the amount that I informed here that we used for our recipe. So this is what the formulas are doing for all the ingredients, and here we have the total for each component in our recipe, and here we already have the value expressed per 100 grams of edible portion of our recipe. So this is how the formulas are working for all components. The difference for the macronutrients is that we don't have the nutrient retention factors in the formula, except for water. For water, we have an additional adjustment because here, as you can see, the formula is considering that the weight that was lost during the preparation was loss of water only, and it's adjusting the amount of water to calculate the final moisture of the cooked dish. So this is the only exception, the only thing that you need to adjust in some cases where the recipe loses, in addition to water, loses also fat. You will need to make the adjustments considering that not only water is lost, and I have already left here one line to make this special adjustment for the recipes where it's required. So here, as I mentioned, you will have in this last line the amount of all components in 100 grams of our recipe. So you can make this procedure for as much recipes as you want to calculate, and you will have all the formulas here. I just recommend that after making the calculations, you just check if you have missing values where you shouldn't, and your final nutrient profile will be ready here for publishing in your food composition table. Again, just remember to adjust the fat for the recipes that require this type of adjustments. And if you think that this recipe calculation template can be useful for you, you can download it. You just need to go to our website, and there you will find the form where you should fill with your details, and you will receive an email with the link to make the download. So I hope that this video and the template can help you on your recipe calculations. Thank you and see you in the next video.